let's go surfing, or not quite literally, but we will be talking about waves in our next session. And for that, I'd like to ask Quentin Henry, Kevin Rebenius, and Jean-François Simon to join me on stage, please. Et vous? Un micro là. Là, oui, si vous pouvez vous asseoir. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here. Quentin Henry, vous êtes directeur du projet DICWE au sein du groupe Le Genre. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Et vous avez une technologie dite de co-bénéfice. Alors qu'est-ce que cela veut dire ?
Alors effectivement, c'est une technologie qui associe à la fois l'énergie des vagues, mais aussi un bénéfice de protection portuaire et au littoral. Et donc c'est une forme de marché de niche qui permet à une technologie motrice de trouver un modèle économique.
D'accord. Et cette technologie, elle a déjà été testée ?
C'est une technologie qui a été testée pendant 1 an sur le site de la Fondation OpenSea, le site de l'Ifremer à Sainte-Anne-du-Porzic. On a eu 1 an de test en mer sur un prototype TRL6 et on a eu l'occasion de monitorer à la fois le rendement énergétique, les performances structurelles et évidemment les impacts environnementaux.
Et dans quelle mesure est-ce que vous avez déjà avancé dans les négociations visant à aboutir à la signature de contrats ?
À la suite de ce projet qui a montré le savoir-faire des équipes communes, puisque c'est un projet qu'on développe aussi avec l'Ifremer et GEPS Techno, on a eu l'opportunité de présenter ce projet-là à différentes structures portuaires, puisque c'est nos premiers clients, on va dire, à travers la France, mais également l'Europe. Et on compte maintenant 5 discussions relativement avancées avec ces ports qui souhaitent à la fois rénover ou construire des digues, mais aussi décarboner leurs activités.
Est-ce que ça veut dire qu'un jour, on pourra installer votre technologie partout dans le monde ou est-ce qu'il y a des limites à ça ?
Alors, il n'y a pas de limite, si ce n'est qu'il faut qu'on soit sur un site exposé avec une énergie des vagues qui est suffisante. Alors ça, c'est la première étape de la technologie, mais finalement, on a eu une idée qui s'apparente plutôt à ce qu'on appelle du nearshore, c'est-à-dire que là, le premier concept dont je vous ai parlé, portuaire, c'est ce qu'on appelle du holomoteur onshore. Et finalement, la seconde idée qui est vraiment la continuité de cette technologie, ça a été d'installer ce système, non pas sur les digues, mais en amont du trait de côte, à quelques centaines de mètres, dans des fonds qui sont relativement modestes, on va dire 10-15 mètres de profondeur, pour installer ce qu'on appelle une technologie nearshore, avec aussi un co-bénéfice d'un point de vue de la protection du littoral, donc pour les zones qui ont des risques d'érosion et de submersion. Et à partir de ce moment-là, on étend le terrain de jeu, c'est-à-dire que sur notre technologie onshore, on a un terrain de jeu en proche Europe qui nous amènerait à installer une puissance de l'ordre de 5 gigawatts. Dès lors qu'on vient s'installer en nearshore et donc sur des linéaires de côte beaucoup plus conséquents, on va atteindre les 40 gigawatts sur la façade atlantique européenne. Évidemment, c'est juste une simulation liée à un gisement. On adorerait faire 40 gigawatts, mais là je vous parle vraiment du gisement potentiel et des sites potentiels.
D'accord, donc quand même un potentiel assez important.
Exactement, c'est un potentiel assez important et encore une fois qui permet de faire avancer toute la filière. Alors il y a beaucoup de projets offshore qui existent déjà. L'avantage du onshore ou du inshore, c'est de pouvoir développer des projets assez rapidement avec des permis assez simples, et de pouvoir faire avancer les technologies et les connaissances scientifiques sur ce domaine-là, et en vue aussi d'accompagner nos confrères, ou de les aider, en tout cas pour ceux qui ont besoin d'être aidés, vers un développement plus large.
Merci beaucoup, Quentin Henry.
Je vous en prie.
Merci. Now, let's move a bit further away from the shore with you, Kevin Rebenius.
All right.
Hello.
Nice to see you again.
Exactly. Thank you for coming again to Synergy. You're commercial director at Sweden-based Core Power. Your company, of course, last year installed its first commercial-scale wave energy prototype off the coast of Portugal, the 300-kilowatt C4 machine, it's called. Is the machine still there? Where are things at this very moment? I understand this is the first step of many to come.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we've had a chance now to have the device installed last August. Been running for 3 months. So we had the target to really, target the survivability and function testing of the system, and also see the power performance, basically. And I guess we got more than we bargained for. during the first 3 months, we were subjected to 4 major storms. So that was amazing. It was actually one of the biggest storms that has ever been measured in the region, so 18-meter waves. And the system managed to survive all 4 and resume operations, so that was a big step for us and for the sector as a whole, I think, because that has been something that's been hampering the sector before. And also it was very good to try all the functions of the system, to do the automated control, like monitoring and O&M methods. And also we actually got the system grid connected to the Portuguese grid, which was also a big step for us. We did parts of the power performance as well, and this is now something that we are working on land at the moment. So we're doing an upgrade and maintenance of the system. So we're planning on going back now in August. So that's when we're going to expand the operational range of the system, pick up the power performance, and do a third-party power performance assessment.
Did you have to change anything after these storms? Did you realize that something needed to be tweaked?
Yeah, there were many things that we needed to change, of course, but also just to adjust the system and optimize things so that we can get a higher power output. But it was quite clear that anything that sticks out on a system like this will get hurt by the storms, for sure.
And what's the next step after this project? When will we see gigawatts of your offshore energy, wave energy?
For us, the next step is to deploy 3 more devices that are the next generation of this device that we call the C5. So that's kind of, the design is ongoing now, and we're drawing the learnings from this installation. So that's going to be happening in 2026. And in parallel, we're actually expanding this test site to become a pre-commercial site. So we're aiming at getting to a 10-megawatt project. And the FID for that is aimed for 2026 as well. So that's a huge step forward for Portugal as well in that region, but we're also looking to expand in other parts of Portugal as well.
Of Portugal or other countries as well?
Yeah, I think, our home market is the European market or the Atlantic coast nations. If we're looking at, of course, France, Portugal, of course, and then we have UK, Ireland, Norway as well, Spain. That all have really great wave climates or wave resources. So these are markets that we are really targeting. And we're looking also at the US West Coast, which also has a very good progress.
Would you say the wave energy market is really at its tipping point right now? Will this really go big now?
Yeah, I think we're kind of getting to that point where it really can pick up for us. We've been a technology development company, but now we're really going commercial. And I think one big step in that direction is the most advanced project that we have is the Saoirse project in Ireland, a 5-megawatt pre-commercial project that's spearheaded by ESB, the Irish state utility there. That's kind of a first really where we can really prove that this is commercially viable, let's say. So I think that's the big next step.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Kevin Rubenius from Core Power. Now, wave energy devices can be particularly useful off islands, and that is something you have special expertise in, Jean-François Simon. You're General Manager France of Sweden-based Sea-Based, a developer of wave machines and projects. And I think you brought a picture of your machine, did you? No?
Yeah, I sent one.
Oh, no, well, it's not showing up, but maybe you could explain.
Yeah, I can explain briefly. We are, our technology is a point absorber technology with direct drive. In fact, it's very simple in principle. You will have a base, a foundation on the seabed, on which is fixed a generator, linear generator, about 6 meters high, and a cable will link this generator to a buoy on the surface of the ocean, will activate the engine. Each unit is 100 kilowatt, and then we group them by 20 units to make 2 megawatt, and each 2 megawatt, each 20 units are linked to a marine substation which does the electric conversion. And then we multiply this 2 megawatt by 5, connected together to a 10 megawatt cable going to the grid, usually to the onshore.
All right.
That's
so
what the picture was showing.
would have shown. Do you want to pick up the piece of paper? I think
That's
there
fine.
your notes. So you have, I understand you have a number of projects, right? Could you talk us through?
The project, yeah. We are at this point working on about 20 around 20 projects around the world, many off islands. The technology, by the way, has been developed since 20 years, and it's protected by more than 300. It looks simple, but more than 300 patents. So about 20 projects, a lot of them off islands, and I can. We have many advantages that we feature for islands. I can
just
tell you that.
Tell us about that.
Okay, it's affordable power because we already can show good level LCOE at entry market, which will improve afterwards with scale economy. We provide, like our colleagues here, base load, which unlike other renewables, we have a compact system in the sense that 2 megawatt at sea will represent only 1 square kilometer. We provide jobs to the islands. We provide energy security to the islands. Many of these islands have, they produce electricity out of fuel-powered power stations. And nobody, of course, knows the cost and availability of fossil fuel in 5 or 10 years, contrary to renewables. There's a host of advantages.
So lots of islands are using diesel generators, right? That's what you.
Sorry?
You mean diesel generators, fuel power?
Yeah, fuel power. Yeah, fuel. Yeah.
And I understand you've got a number of projects that are quite in an advanced state,
Yeah.
like Tonga, Bermuda, Martinique, South Africa, right?
Yeah, you're right. So for some of these projects, we don't go public yet. They're just starting. But Tonga has started. All of the projects I'm going to mention now have strong governmental support in their area. MOUs have been signed. Prime ministers often have announced the project. In Bermuda, the project is the initial project is 40 megawatt. It's going to develop over time. We usually start with a 2 megawatt pilot and then we expand. It will be grid connected. Then there is, I'm looking at my paper because it's a bit different. In Barbados, it's 10 plus megawatt, but there it's due to make hydrogen, greener hydrogen, of course. Then there is Tonga, recently signed, 10 megawatt, also to be linked to the grid. And we're also working on a project in Martinique, which is a French island in the Caribbean. And there we aim at 50 megawatt connected to the grid with the first slice of 10 megawatt. It will account for about 12% of the electricity consumption in Martinique.
Of Martinique. And when will the first commercial project be up and running, and which will be the first one?
It could be Martinique or the Bermudas. These two are the most advanced. In 1 or 2 years, we're going to produce and install.
You explained earlier on your technology with that foundation that's put on the seabed, sandy seabeds, and over the phone, you and your colleague, you told me that you had a special group of fans. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, the Norwegian
Lobsters.
lobster story, as we call it. In fact, our foundations are concrete, ferroconcrete, and they are just laid on the seabed. It's not anchored in the sea. And what we have done in Sweden, in Sutenäs, is that right? We had an area there, and we've made holes in the foundation. Usually our machines are laid on the seabed in the area which are quite desert, in the sense that it's stretches of sand or gravel, and there's not a lot of sea life. There is, but not too much. And what we did there is we, after 3 to 4 weeks after installation, a lot of these lobsters migrated into the artificial reefs, in fact, that we've built there. And after 2 months, other species, fishes and stuff came, and it was quite like a rocky or type of
aquarium.
Sea base, almost like coral. So that when 1 year later we had to dismantle the installations, the local fishermen said, no, we want you to leave the foundations in place because the fishing is so good. So that was a good, we didn't know when we started, it was such a good experience, and we're going to replicate it now.
Right. The fishermen were quite happy because Norwegian lobsters are quite pricey as well, right? Quite expensive.
Yeah, it's for the fishermen, it's an important
Source of income.
species that they like to catch over there. I think it's close to what in French we call langoustine. It's something like that.
Great. Well, lots of islands will go for your technology in the future, possibly. Thank you so much. Thank you, all of
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
participating. And thank you for listening.
Thank you.